Let's bring John into the conversation, our NFL news and notes with John McMullen here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. We're getting close to the draft. We've also got some big names in the news today, and we saw an NFL star last night at WrestleMania, John. I'm sure the Patriots were thrilled to see their tight end who missed the year due to injury in the Andre the Giant Battle of the Royal last night.
Well, not only that, but he wasn't. He was at opening day today, stealing back Tom Brady's jersey. So
running onto the field, right? He was running onto the field, like having the security chase him around.
Which is amazing because I think WrestleMania just ended an hour ago, so he must have had a jet to get back. That was one long show, but
I am right there. You know, I didn't start watching last night till after 10.
And you still had 3 hours to go or so. But
when I get home tonight, I gotta watch the next 3 hours of it.
Supposedly he cleared it with the Patriots, and he didn't do much physically, so I think everything's fine. But hey. The last 2 days sums up Rob Gronkowski. He likes to have fun, and he's in Orlando having fun one day. He's back in Boston having fun the next day. And, hey, it's just something you put up with if you have maybe the best tight end of all time, and that's what Rob Gronkowski is. Whether he's completely healthy, he's had a number of issues, obviously, going back years. Just the physical way he plays football. I think he's susceptible to injuries, and I don't think that's going to change, and I don't think being in WrestleMania or being at Red Sox opening day is going to change much of it either way.
Well, John, what are the possibilities that Gronkowski could have a new teammate, that being Adrian Peterson? He left New England without a deal, but is that the best spot for him? And apparently, according to reports, there are 3 to 5 teams out there that do have interest in Peterson. So give us kind of the skinny on Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best spot for him if you see what the Patriots are able to do. And think about this, LeGarrette Blount, who's basically the same type of player, but obviously less talented, but he's a 2-down back. He gets 18 rushing touchdowns in that offense last season. Now, in a different era of pro football, getting 18 touchdowns on the ground would just be looked at with reverence. It would be one of the great single seasons of all time. And the Patriots basically have no interest in bringing LeGarrette Blount back because they know the nature of that position in today's football. You can kind of just mix and match. And they've already signed Rex Burkhead. And think about that. Rex Burkhead was a third-string running back in Cincinnati. The Patriots think he could be their bell cow, be their top starting running back, and he might very well will be. But that doesn't – Bill Belichick's always thinking ahead. And if there's an opportunity to get a player like Adrian Peterson on a one-year deal for basically no money, just incentives, don't be surprised if he ends up there and he's the one scoring 18 touchdowns next season. But for Adrian as a whole, we've talked about this from the beginning of this process, basically. He has to temper his ego. And if he wants to play, and he wants to play in this league at 32, coming off the season he had last season, it's just a reality that he's not going to get a lot of money, and that's tough for someone like him to accept.
Sure. Yeah, and look, some of these guys, too, though, the advantage of being the Patriots is they're willing to take less money to go there.
Sure, and that's part of it. And it's played out many times over the years, and I think it's going to continue to play out as long as Tom Brady is playing at the level he is. Who knows how long that will last? He's talking about playing 6 or 7 more years. I couldn't imagine that part happening, but as long as you know they're going to be a significant Super Bowl contender for a lot of these veteran players, when you've already made your money and you kind of have all the individual accolades as Adrian Peterson has. He's been an MVP in this league. He's a 7-time Pro Bowler, multi-time All-Pro. one of the greatest rushers of all time. The only thing left for his resume is winning a Super Bowl. And where can he win a Super Bowl? Well, New England's at the top of that list.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Of course, don't forget his national NFL coverage at FanRag Sports NFL. Interesting news with Tony Romo that's being reported that the Cowboys have given him permission now to speak to other teams. That changes the dynamics a little bit now that they're not holding him back. They're saying if you can go find a deal, go out there and find something, right?
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this last week. The opening of the off-season programs around the NFL is going to start later this month. It starts for the teams with new coaches. It can start as early as this week. But if you're talking about Houston, it's April 17th. And if you're going to have a new quarterback, you generally want him to be around for the off-season work just to get himself situated in a new environment with new teammates. So despite Jerry Jones talking about training camp as sort of the deadline for something to happen, it was always going to be sort of that mid-April time frame, and you saw it get kick-started today by giving him permission to go get a trade. And even if that's a late conditional round pick for the Cowboys, that's something. And it's something that they would like, and rather than just releasing it. But the problem for the Cowboys is you're talking about two teams. You're talking about the Houston Texans and Denver Broncos. And unless you can play those two teams off of each other, it's very difficult to get them to move because they know you have to eventually release them. And I think from Houston's standpoint, they kind of understand that's where he wants to be. So if they want to wait, they can wait and probably get him anyway.
John, according to ESPN's John Keim, the Redskins' offer to Kirk Cousins was for 5 years and around $20 million annually. How will this all play out in your mind for Cousins?
Well, I think he's going to play out the year and play under the franchise tender again, which is about $24 million. And it has more to do with the fact that he's like everybody else in that he sees what's going on with the Redskins and their front office and what they did to Scott McClugan and kind of the hit job they performed on him. And he's not sure he wants to be in that organization long term. And he realizes they can't franchise him again. He sees Kyle Shanahan, who has a ton of respect for, out in San Francisco now as the head coach. They don't have a long-term answer at the quarterback position. They're probably not going to get it in the draft. So this could be a waiting pattern. And unless the Washington Redskins can convince Kirk Cousins that they're not completely dysfunctional, I think he just might play out his contract and go play with Kyle Shanahan next season.
Any shot that they pull something off on draft day?
The problem with that is if you're San Francisco, not only would you have to give up, in theory, the second overall pick, but then on top of it, you have to pay the quarterback $20 million a year. And that is a lot for anybody to give up. So I think they would be willing to sort of swallow it and understand they have a new coach, so they have a little time to work with. And I think from their standpoint, the reality is they can get the quarterback. They're going to have to pay him $20 million a year, but you don't have to give up that second overall pick. And you can get a very significant contributor on top of Kirk Cousins. So I think from their standpoint, I don't think they're in a hurry to get it done. And I think they'd be very wary of giving up a selection like that. And obviously when you're talking about a franchise quarterback, and we can use our terminology, we can define that any way we want, but the way Kirk Cousins has played, he's a franchise quarterback in this league. And that's the kind of draft pick the Washington Redskins would want back, and I just don't think they're going to be able to get it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because all of the quarterbacks in this division, there seems like there's a story other than, in Philadelphia. I mean, I know Dak is kind of in there, entrenched as the starter there, but you got the Romo story there. You've got the Cousins story there. What's the Eli story? Because, they got to start – you got to think that they're going to start looking for a replacement soon, right?
Yeah, and they have. They've been looking at all the quarterbacks in this draft, and there was kind of a eyebrows raised in New York, so to speak, because Ben McAdoo went to look at Patrick Mahomes, the Texas Tech quarterback. And you don't think about coaches looking at quarterbacks. Okay, you look at a lot of kids coming out in the draft, but the interesting part of that was he had never been to a pro day before. He doesn't do that. And he actually went to Texas Tech to take a look at the kid. So everyone looks at the Giants. I think they're 23rd overall, and that would be right in the place where a kid like Mahomes might go. Mm-hmm. So people are putting 2 and 2 together. I think it's a little bit overblown because he was out in Phoenix for the spring meetings, like all the coaches were, and Lubbock, Texas, is only 2 hours away. So it was sort of a stopover when he was coming back. So I think it was a little bit overblown, but there's no doubt the Giants as a whole have been looking at all the quarterbacks. The offensive coordinator was looking at Deshaun Kaiser of Notre Dame. So they're going to draft a quarterback. I don't know if they're going to draft one in the first round.
Who was the kid? Who was the kid they took from Syracuse? Nassib? Right, and
Ryan Nassib.
Right, Nassib.
He's a free agent.
Remember, people thought. I mean, it's funny. Remember when he was in that draft? Some people thought he was a first rounder. It might have been the best quarterback in that draft. Apparently, the Giants didn't see him that way.
No, well, they had saw him his entire rookie contract, and they made the decision that he's not the future there. He's on the street now. He's a free agent. He's not signed anywhere. They signed Geno Smith to change locker rooms. He's going to be the backup this season, but he's obviously not the heir apparent to Eli Manning either. So they want to get a young guy that can kind of groom. They know Eli still has a number of years left, but yeah, they're like a lot of teams. New Orleans, San Diego with Phillip Rivers, all these teams, they know they have their quarterback still in place, still playing at a relatively high level, but all of them are starting to think about life after, and they need to get a young guy in the groom. You can add Arizona to that list as well with Carson Palmer. And the Giants have been doing their due diligence with all the quarterback prospects.
Hey, you mentioned Kaiser. So while we're down that path, give us your take on this quarterback class as we'll get more into the draft. But you brought Kaiser up. I'm interested to see what you think about him and this quarterback class this year.
Well, he had a bad year at Notre Dame last season, which hurt him. A lot of people think he should have stayed in college. He had another year of eligibility. I think physically he's got the highest ceiling of this group as far as physical abilities, as far as translating to the professional level and traditional pro set offenses. I think his skill set is tremendous, but most people in this league don't think he's ready. I don't think that offense, I don't think Brian Kelly helped him at all in what they sort of ran. So it's one of those things, and this crops up with Pat Mahomes we just talked about with the Giants, has the same types of issues, playing at Texas Tech, which is sort of an air raid spread offense. A lot of these guys have the same issues in that scouts in this league, coaches are very, very frustrated because they're not ready to play. And I think the whole mentality of the NFL has to change because they keep getting these types of prospects, and all they do is complain. And you're going to have to sort of calibrate what you do and understand you have to teach these kids. And I'm tremendously high on Kaiser because he's smart. He's got all the physical abilities you could want, and I think they translate, as I said, well to the NFL. But people want a finished product. You're just not getting that anymore from the college level.
John McMullen will have more on the draft at JF McMullen on Twitter, and of course, find him at 973ESPN.com. And his NFL coverage nationally is posted right there at FanRag Sports NFL, where you can get all his opinions on the National Football League. Mandatory tomorrow, NFL. John is back with the latest on the NFL. We'll look at the draft and, of course, all the NFL news and notes. Thanks, John.
Hey, thanks, guys.